this might be my most interesting prediction. Maybe I should have talked about this sooner, but to me, I'm going to dive into the 49ers. And, the 49ers ended last season at 4-11. And they were plagued with injuries, right? So I'll say that in fairness. Like Christian McCaffrey had an injury, Brandon Ayuk had a major injury. They were top 10 in total offense and defense, and still they got last place in the NFC West. I don't really understand how that is possible, but being a top 10 offensive and defensive team in the NFL, but then getting last place in the NFC West is a huge sort of like that's just, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Like I don't know how else to say it besides like make that make sense. And what I came to realize was like the fact that like their offense was getting the yards, but then they weren't capitalizing and scoring, right? The 49ers would bring the ball down and either they would get stopped or they would turn the ball over. And then their defense was just finding themselves in terrible positions. They were 14th in points while their defense was fifth. They gave up the fifth most points, right? So imagine being a top 10 defense but giving up the fifth most points in the NFL. That is crazy. And again, the only way that can ever make sense is if their defense was constantly found in bad positions based off of field position, right? You're turning the ball over or you're getting stopped somewhere. And they let players like Deebo Samuel leave, who I think was kind of like the engine that could for the 49ers. I think Deebo Samuel was their Swiss Army knife, especially when they don't have CMC out there. And again, also Brandon Ayuk being injured. So like that's a huge loss for the 49ers. And again, they're not expecting to see Brandon Ayuk until at least week 6. And again, I know that people are excited about the 49ers this year, and I'll be honest, I don't really understand why. Everyone's expecting them to have this bounce back season, and I'm like looking through everything. I'm like doing all this research. I'm like, they let go of Dre Greenlaw, like Hufanga, Charvarius Ward on defense. Like those are huge defensive players for them that they lost in free agency. And like they didn't pick up anyone I'm overly excited about. So like what are people actually excited about? I think people are just like, oh, the injuries are gone. Like they're just gonna be better, right? Like they don't have injuries. So it's like one, they still do have injuries. Here's like probably the craziest stat I was looking at when it comes to the 49ers. Their wide receiving core right now, right? They have one player on their depth chart that doesn't have an injury designation, and it's Ricky Pearsall, their second-year wide receiver, who had injuries last year. But if you look at this, Russell Gage, Jordan Watkins, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, right? Demarcus Robinson is suspended, right? You literally have Ricky Pearsall as the only one that is not listed at questionable or out on this receiving core. Sorry, Sky Moore. I can't believe I forgot about Sky Moore. Sky Moore is healthy. Cool. Like, what is that going to do? So you're putting all this on Christian McCaffrey, who seemingly had this like a scary potential Achilles injury last year. He didn't play to essentially avoid that injury. So we'll see where he is. You have George Kittle, who I think is a great tight end, a great leader, a great locker room guy. So you're putting all this on Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle essentially. Because I don't know what to expect out of Ricky Pearsall. I haven't heard anyone being overly excited about him, right? He didn't play a lot in the preseason because he was also dealing with injuries, right? He had some tough soft tissue injuries that was keeping him out of preseason games. You have a Trent Williams at tackle who, I mean, at some point you gotta see him starting to fall, right? The guy's 37 years old. He's getting paid an astronomical amount of money, but he's 37 years old. At a certain point, he's gonna fall off. I don't know if it's gonna be this year, but at the same time, you're banking on a lot of these players to produce a lot for this team that I don't think is going to happen. I'm going to be honest. A lot of people have the San Francisco 49ers as a playoff team. I think with a healthy CMC, the best they will do is 7-10. I have them really being around 5-12, 6-11. this season. That is, I think they're going to be last place in the NFC West again. And I don't understand and see why people think that they're going to have a much better season this season. They let so many key players go, and they still have the injury issues. There's nothing that's been solved. Like, people go, oh, like, it's the new year, 49ers are going to be good again. It's like, look at the actual information. Like, read a book, right? Like, seriously, because to me, I'm looking at this team, I'm like, I don't see them being any better than last year. If anything, they'll be worse because like Deebo Samuel's not there. So again, I have Deebo Samuel less 49ers. I have the 49ers going 6-11, potentially even 5-12 this year.